After a good day of backpacking, you want to hold on to those endorphins and good feelings when you get to camp. But if you're like me, you're usually dirty, sore, tired, and hungry. But there are 5 things that I do when I get to camp in order to keep my body and mind comfortable and keep those good feelings going. I'm usually pretty ravenous when I get to camp and usually on the verge or in full-fledged hunger mode. But before you go into tent site paralysis or get into a big fight with the person that you're on a trip with, have a snack. I always have some sort of quick energy snack with me, like fruit bars or dried fruit or chocolate, in order to give me that extra little bit of boost in order to get through those initial camp chores until dinner time. Sometimes it's easy to get to camp and want to get a fire going, make dinner, and do other things. But I recommend getting your tent set up and airing out your sleeping bag or quilt right away. That is, right away after having a snack. After being compressed inside of your pack all day, your sleeping bag or quilt is gonna take a while in order to loft up, in order to provide maximum warmth. I've left a quilt in my pack until right before bedtime, and it took much longer than I would have liked in order for it to loft up fully and provide maximum warmth. Even synthetic insulation is gonna take a little bit to loft up, but down can take up to a couple of hours to get to its full loft, depending on how much is in that quilt or sleeping bag. A routine that isn't related to camp but helps me find the latest and greatest cool gear is checking out the new gear page from the sponsor of today's video, Garage Growing Gear. This alpaca wool shirt, the Spuds stick stashers, and the little thermodrop thermometer are all finds that I found from the new gear page. Garage Growing Gear is constantly posting to the page, and I find myself checking it a few times a week to see what is new and coming down the pipe. I've received some intel from Garage Growing Gear that there's some really cool new gear items that are going to be posted to the page sometime in the near future. Things like a new ultralight Dyneema tent from a brand that you've probably never heard of before, as well as a couple cool new packs. So go check out the QR code right there or the link in the video description to check out new gear from Garage Growing Gear. The third thing I do when I get to camp has to do with your feet. Whether it's due to walking through water or just sweat, my feet and socks are often damp when I get to camp. In order to dry out my socks and shoes as well as air out my feet, I take the insoles out of my shoe, I take my sock off, and then I wear my shoes barefoot. That is, if I don't have camp sandals or slippers. Separating the shoe, insoles, and socks allows all 3 to dry better, and removing that moisture from right around your foot is going to help avoid things like trench foot as well as other foot problems. When I get to camp, I'm usually feeling pretty good, but as I sit around, and definitely by the next morning, my muscles really stiffen up. I'm not getting any younger. That is, unless I get a good stretching. My routine starts with my calves and then works its way up. Some of my go-to stretches include finding a rock or a root and then just kind of putting my foot up against it and really stretching my calf out. Another one that I like to do for my IT band is to do a hip hinge. So you keep your knees locked and then you just hinge at the hip and you really feel it kind of through here. If you're feeling it too much in the hamstring, then you're probably not doing it quite right. The other 2 stretches that I like to do are quad stretches, so just pulling your quad back like this with your hand, as well as stretching out my glutes by crossing one leg over my knee and then pulling my knee to the right and then kind of leaning into the stretch and really feeling it through the glute. Depending on how I'm feeling, I might also use my trekking pole in order to roll out some muscles, especially things like my quads. You can really get in there. Ooh, that feels good. Or my calves. The calves are a tough one to really get into, and I find they're one of the most sore things at the end of the day, so I really like to get into those. Some people bring little rolly balls, but I find that those just aren't as effective for me as a trekking pole where I can really put some muscle into it. As I'm backpacking, I'm putting sunscreen on my face, sweating, getting dirty, and just generally creating a caking mess of sweat, grime, and dirt. It feels pretty gross, and one of my favorite things to do before bed is to take some water and then wash my face and head and get all that stuff washed off. And then depending on how my feet are doing, I might give them a little wash as well, depending on how many days I've been on trail, just to get rid of some of that sweat, dirt, and stank. Grit that builds up on your feet can be a big cause of blisters, so it's good to get it off. Between using a backcountry bidet for number 2 and then washing my face and feet almost every night, even on the longest trip, I feel really clean and I'm not feeling like a dirtbag on trail. If you have troubles figuring out where to go, what to pack, and what to eat for backpacking trips, go check out this video. I provide a whole bunch of tips for both new and experienced backpackers to figure out those 3 things.